This switch is a banger with a big butt. The Oolong linear switch from Zenclack has been out for a little while now, and I finally got my hands on some. Now, I was really excited to check these switches out because all the reviews I've seen are really positive, and there are some things about this switch that make it stand out in the sea of long pole linear switches. But what makes these Oolong stand out? And where's the big butt that I mentioned? We'll find out right after Oolong. Press that like button. The Oolongs are manufactured by JWK for Zenclack, who's a newish vendor to the mechanical keyboard space. They're based out of Southern California, and they've brought some really awesome products to the market, including these replacement GMK trays, so you can protect your shining new GMK keycaps from the roaches. It's kind of interesting because Glendale, the guy behind Zenclack, started the company because of frustration with fulfillment issues with certain vendors in the space, and he basically wanted to bring his own product ideas to life while offering great customer service. The Oolong itself is inspired by the OP Black with a long pole Kale Black stem, and it has a very distinct marbly sound signature. The Oolongs are their first switch, and it checks all the right boxes for the current state of the meta. A milky top, similar to the OP Blacks, which are based on the unobtainium Nixie switch tops, a 13.45mm long pole palm stem, a nylon bottom housing, and a 62-gram, 19mm long 2-stage spring. They're also not lubed from the factory, which I personally prefer. And that's where the asterisk comes in, right after we take a listen to these switches stock. Because these switches are not factory lubed, there's a slight scratchy sensation that isn't there in a lot of the other factory lube switches that we've reviewed lately. I tested further, and I think it's due to the stem rubbing against the top housing, which is magnified because the housing is super tight. Now, don't get me wrong, I did find these switches to be quite smooth in actual use, but the rubbing was something I noticed while I was testing out the bare switches. One other point I have to mention is the springs. While the 62-gram 2-stage springs are very comfortable to type on, they're quite noisy, and you're definitely going to have to lube them if you don't plan on spring swapping. I hand lube my springs with Krytox 205G0, making sure to ring around the middle portion of the spring, as I found that a lot of spring crunch is caused by the 2 stages compressing against the middle. As for other mods, I think I'm in the minority that lubes top housings on all my switches, but I definitely recommend lubing the top housings here to get rid of that rubbing sensation. As for films, I wanted to point out that I was corrected in the comments of my Tofu linear review. Switch films are normally recommended to fix housing wobble, not stem wobble. Here, films aren't necessary because even after opening up the switches for my mods, the top housings were almost too tight to get back on, and I didn't notice any housing wobble. It's clear that the tolerances on these Oolongs are super tight, which is another reason why I'd definitely recommend lubing to get the most out of them. Take a quick listen to a typing test after I lube the switches, as well as a comparison to some other long pole linears. The Oolongs have a pretty distinct sound signature due to their milky top. These are the only milky top long pole linear that I've tried, and it's a nice balance to the long pole clack. Now it's time for the good, the bad, and the ugly. First, the good. These switches are smooth out of the box, and interestingly, I didn't notice a significant improvement in smoothness after lubing, which speaks to the quality of JWK linears and these switches in particular. I test drive any switches that I review stock for about a week or so before I write the review, and I found them to be really pleasant in their stock form, at least as far as smoothness is concerned. However, we're finally at the big but: the spring. They're extremely noisy and crunchy, at least in the batch that I received, and they're definitely the weak point of this switch. Now, I will admit that I work in total silence, so I'm very sensitive to sounds like spring and leaf noise. Also, the Polaris that I use to review switches has no foam or case dampening material, and I do my sound test comparisons on the top row of alphas because it's the most resonant, so it really brings out the worst case scenario of any switch. Here, the spring noise is clearly audible, as is some ticking that you can fix by lightly lubing the leaf. Keep in mind, pretty much all factory lube switches from the big players like JWK, Gateron, and Texi oil the leaf to reduce ticking, and the ticking isn't too bad on the Oolongs even without lube. So now for the ugly. At 61.75 cents per switch using code MAKER at checkout, these are squarely average from a long pole linear pricing perspective, and at least as far as Milky top switches have been priced these days, the Oolongs are on the cheaper side. However, you have to account for the cost of lubing and a potential spring swap, all of which would be normal a year ago, but definitely make this switch a less compelling option in the fall of 2022. We have a lot of switch options that are factory lubed with 205G0 and have no spring noise at basically the same price point, so your decision will likely come down to the sound signature of these switches, which I have to admit is unique among the long pole linears I've tried. The bottom line is, at 13.45mm, the Oolongs aren't the longest pole stem. Being factory unlubed means they aren't the smoothest out of the box, and at 62 cents per switch, they aren't the cheapest either. However, the Oolongs are a truly endgame worthy switch if you're willing to put in the work. If you prefer solder over hot swap, or if you're a part of the Switch Modders subreddit. Check out some other switch reviews here. I'm MakerMods, and I'll catch you in the next video.